Hi everyone, I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much for joining me. If you are a prepper, keep on prepping. Evidently, Putin made a speech yesterday telling NATO, the US and Europe, that allowing NATO to use long-range arms there in Ukraine to strike Russia means war. Often living with non-preppers is very trying. Just do what you can. Keep preparing, just like God told Noah to prepare for what was coming. That's just one example of God telling his people that things were coming and to get ready. If you live with a non-prepper, it's often hard to explain to them about the ideology behind you stocking up on food, medicine, water, and other emergency supplies. It's a really good way to fight against inflation. Or if there's a disruption in goods being delivered like we've seen during COVID, yeah, that's another good reason to have things already stocked up. More about that in a minute. Britain and the United States are on the verge of allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles against targets in Russia after accusing President Putin of escalating the conflict by accepting ballistic missiles from Iran. David Land, the former secretary, and Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, said they would return to their countries to inform leaders of the operational details surrounding Ukraine's use of weapons such as Storm Shadow missiles after meeting President Zelensky in Kyiv. President Putin spoke at the St. Petersburg International United Cultures Forum, and in his address he said that long-range arms for Kyiv would mean NATO countries are at war at Russia. It's been going on for a long time. We got American troops and French troops, Polish troops that have been killed there in Ukraine. After saying they wouldn't send fighter jets of F-16s to Ukraine, we ended up doing that anyways. We sent American personnel there, supposedly, to train Ukrainian soldiers. We blew up the pipeline there. We've been using our satellites and other types of technology to help Ukraine in the war against Russia. Ukraine does not have access to the satellites, so it's NATO that is supplying the information so they can send in missiles and the drones to Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that the West is giving Kyiv the green light to use long-range weapons to strike Russian targets would mean NATO will be at war with Russia. A Russian senator wrote on Telegram in response to UK's preparing more long-range Shadow missiles for Ukraine. He said the decision to strike Russian territory is clearly being prepared. Yeah, and Russia knows this. They're being prepared. They've been sending drones over the border of Poland, I believe recently Hungary. And we've known for quite a while that Russia also has nuclear weapons that they sent to Belarus. Here's a Twitter post that says, Lithuania urges NATO to shoot down Russian drones entering alliance territories. Lithuanian Defense Ministry has called for changes to NATO's air patrol mission in the Baltic states following the recent downing of a Russian military drone in Latvia. The air patrol should not only monitor but also, when necessary, speed up NATO's decision-making process so that the planes can take off immediately and destroy drones. Cassiunas said. He emphasized that if radar detection a potential drone entering NATO territories, their information must be quickly relayed to NATO headquarters. The NATO headquarters evaluates whether the drone is an enemy craft or another aircraft, and when off course, and then quickly decide to launch air patrols. This process needs to be faster, he said. Another Twitter post from the European correspondent. A Russian shaded-style military drone carrying explosives entered Latvia airspace and crashed in the municipality of Resen in eastern Latvia on Saturday. Here on Twitter it says the incident has also drawn attention to similar events elsewhere, whether as a stray warrior action or tests of hybrid warfare tactics. Recently, another Russian drone violated NATO's airspace in Romania and Poland. Authorities launched a search operation following reports of a suspected drone crash within their borders. This growing pattern has raised alarms across Eastern Europe, fueling calls for a coordinated effort to assess NATO's response and resolve in the face of such provocation. So more than likely what Russia is doing is testing their defenses. Another Twitter post says the White House finalizing plans to expand where Ukraine can hit inside Russia. I believe they've already given them the green light. It says the White House is ready to green light use of American missiles to strike targets deep inside of Russia. You know, it started out that we are using Ukraine as a proxy with the war of Russia, and now it's escalating. And if we do go to nuclear war, well, the first place is going to be hit will probably be Europe, and then more likely the United States. Are you prepared? Russians have many ways to retaliate. Why are we taking this risk? Ukraine is neither a treaty ally, nope, they're not part of NATO, nor a vital interest. Biden himself once warned this could cause World War III. Putin yesterday also said, this is part of his statement, I have already mentioned this, and any expert will confirm, both in our country and in the West, that the Ukrainian army is not capable of independently carrying out strikes using Western modern long-range precision systems. It cannot do this. This is possible only with the usage of intelligence from satellites, which Ukraine does not have. This data is only available from satellites of the European Union or the United States. In other words, from NATO satellites. This is the first point, Putin said. The second, and very important, perhaps the key point, is that only NATO servicemen can make flight assignments to these missile systems. Ukrainian servicemen cannot do this, Putin said. So this is not about whether or not to allow the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia using these weapons, but of deciding whether or not NATO countries are directly involved in the military conflict or not. Storm Shadow missiles can hit targets up to 155 miles or 250 kilometers from their launch sites, meaning that they could strike deep into Russian territory. They are powerful enough to penetrate bunkers and ammunition stores and damage airfields and can be precisely targeted. They were developed in an Anglo-French collaboration and manufactured by a joint venture also involving Italy, using components supplied by the U.S. Consequently, all four countries would have to sign off on any change to the conditions attached to them for their use, even if they are not the direct suppliers themselves. Matthew Sable, the director of military sciences at the defense think tank RISI in London, said Ukraine had not briefed allies in advance about its incursion into Kursk. It changes the debate about escalation and the use inside Russia of long-range missiles, he said. There is also news this week that Russia had received a batch of ballistic missiles from Iran. This had changed strategic thinking in London and Washington. What they're hoping is that using these new missiles would make ordinary citizens more fearful of the consequence of the war in Ukraine. A strike that can cause many civilian casualties could be very problematic for the West, and if it was caused by the Storm Shadow missile, it would be very hard to deny Western involvement. Sable also cautioned that it would be very, very hard to knock out Russian air bases, which were mostly lots of concrete and hundreds of kilometers beyond the front line. ATAC missiles with cluster bombs would be more effective than non-cluster armed Storm Shadows, he suggested. I think what he's looking for, what he's waiting for, is to give the world hard evidence that NATO is in fact involved in the war between Ukraine and Russia. So he goes on to say that if a decision is taken, meaning, that NATO is in fact involved, it will mean nothing short of direct participation of NATO countries, the United States, European countries, in the war in Ukraine. This would constitute their direct participation, and this, of course, changes the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. It will mean that NATO countries, the United States, and the European countries are at war with Russia. And if this is so, bearing in mind the change in the very nature of the conflict, we will make appropriate decisions based on threats that will be posted to us, Putin said. And there's another Twitter post that says Putin said that the permission for long-range strikes against Russia will mean that NATO countries are directly at war with Russia. He called it war. Well, we've already taken out at least two that I know of, two of their over-the-horizon missile defense systems. Ukraine used, drones, I think, to take out Russia's missile defense systems, the over-the-horizon systems that would warn them of missiles coming in, possibly nuclear weapons. So that has already happened. I suppose it would mean what areas in Russia were struck. If it was something major that Russia considered a big threat, a big blow to Russia to save face, they would definitely retaliate. What's going on there in Ukraine and Russia is not like the movies where, you go there for an hour and a half, 2-hour movie and, the battle happens and the war breaks out. And no, it's not like that. It's a slow-moving, slow process of the build-up to war. And we need to be prepared. Like I said, living with non-preppers is really difficult. We go out and we stock up on freeze-dried food, dehydrated food, which has a long shelf life. And it's expensive. Recently I've fallen into disagreements about my daughter and her boyfriend eating my dehydrated and freeze-dried food. And the boyfriend actually had the nerve to say, well, you ain't going to live that long, so you might as well eat it. And I reminded her that it is my stuff, things that I have purchased with my own money. And there are things that, they probably should be eaten first because of the expiration date. Canned food actually has no expiration date. Unless the cans are dented or rusted, they'll last for years and years and years. I recently found a $42 bag of freeze-dried eggs opened and used. I bought my daughter chickens. They have chickens. I bought the pen that they're in. I bought the hen house that they go into. I told her, you got chickens that lay eggs every day. Why are you eating my freeze-dried eggs? This is very expensive. But some people, I don't know, they're just selfish, uncaring. Seeing the bag of freeze-dried, dehydrated eggs is a quicker usage than going out to the hen house and gathering the eggs. I don't know. What I've resorted to is some of the things I have replaced, and when the boxes come in the mail, I just don't open. I just leave them in the box so they don't know what I got. When they raised the rent to my apartment, my daughter asked me to move in with her, figuring that the money that I would save in, the rent, I would contribute to the family, which I did. But more and more it seems like the only reason she wanted me to move in was because of the added income. And I expected that, but I didn't expect to be completely taken advantage of, taking all my supplies and eating them up so fast that they're gaining weight while I'm losing weight. Her boyfriend, when I first moved in, was eating a half gallon of the cookies that I had put up. every night a half-gallon of cookies. So I know it's hard to prepare, especially when you have a spouse or somebody that you're living with that is not a prepper. They just don't understand. They see all the goodies and think, oh, good, I'm going to eat this. And it's more expensive replacing what's been eaten, that's for sure. So what I'm doing now is replacing the cookies, and I'm putting them in my bedroom. Just like when I had my apartment, putting the goods underneath the dresser, underneath the bed, in cupboards. And the closer we get to war, I am so glad that, I do have a stockpile of food, even if they don't appreciate it. I often wonder if we do go to nuclear war, like Putin is threatening, that NATO is pushing for. It's obvious NATO is definitely pushing for a full-blown war with Russia. Is it part of the plan to decrease the world's population? I think so. Then if some sort of nuclear bomb is detonated anywhere within the UK or Ukraine, depending on which way the wind blows, what's it going to do to your food, the supply of food? The UK imports a large amount of food from the United States and other countries. Then also you're going to have the disruption of goods being delivered. So what are your thoughts? Put your comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you later. God bless y'all. Bye.